Hey everyone, it's August 18th, 2024. We're a couple of weeks ahead of schedule, but welcome to the reboot of Montreal Hockey Talk, or call it MHT 2.0, whatever you prefer. Make sure you follow us on all the socials for the latest from Montreal Hockey Talk, whether it's on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, you name it, we're there. And make sure you follow our TikTok page at MHT Pod for daily shorts about your Montreal Canadiens leading up to our weekly show. That being said, it's time for Montreal Hockey Talk. Remember, everybody, to like, subscribe, and click to get notified so that you get the latest and greatest from Montreal Hockey Talk week after week. You know, we want you guys to help spread the love and show people that we're back. So please make sure you subscribe and tell your friends, tell everybody, because we need to grow this channel to get back to where we were before we shut it down just before the pandemic. Now, on today's episode of Montreal Hockey Talk, one of the very popular and common themes right now is whether or not the Canadiens should or should not help out the Edmonton Oilers. Hashtag Oilers with your comments in the comments below. But let's see where we're going to go with this. Then we're going to take a look at some RFAs that I think the Canadiens should target. And a couple of, you guys on the internet decided might be a good idea to go chase. I'll let you know whether or not I think it's a good idea. Again, you could comment hashtag RFAs and see whether or not your comments fall in line with everybody else listening to the show. And then the Montreal Penguins. Yep, an idea that I have, given something that was said earlier in the week about Chris Letang. I honestly think maybe, just maybe, scenario 2.0 might actually work. So let's get to it. Why the Canadiens should help the Edmonton Oilers. Oh, let me count the ways why they shouldn't. The St. Louis Blues signed two players to offer sheets, right? Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. And it kind of shocked the hockey world because nobody really does it. Although Kevin Lowe was really popular for doing it with Brian Burke way back in the day. And of course, we all know of Marc Bergevin getting into it with Don Waddell about Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Sebastian Aho back in the day and concurring offer sheets from one year to the next. Thanks for the favor, by the way, Mr. Waddell. You helped us out really with Kotkaniemi big time. But anyway, I digress. But the Oilers are just coming off a Stanley Cup Finals appearance, right? Losing in 7 games to the Florida Panthers. The team had a fantastic season. And they let go of their general manager. They just let him walk away. A Hall of Fame general manager, no less, than Ken Holland. And I think that, according to what people are speculating, is the reason why these offer sheets were signed. Now, granted, the Blues can use the players, I'm sure. But the Oilers just got caught with their pants down. Why? Because they were in transition. Holland was gone. The current staff was waiting on the new GM. The new GM, who happens to be former disgruntled, or disgraced, I should say, Chicago Blackhawks GM Stan Bowman. He's the new GM, not familiar with all the dossiers in Edmonton, and he gets caught with his pants down. Do I feel sorry for Stan Bowman? I'll get to that in a minute. But do I feel bad for the Edmonton Oilers? No, I don't. When you treat a guy who, in every hockey circle you talk about, is revered as a general manager, a guy who's been given all the credit in the world for turning the Detroit Red Wings from a really crappy team into the powerhouse that they were in the 90s and 2000s. I mean, this is how you let him go, unceremoniously. Thanks, but no thanks. You got us to the Cup final. I'm not giving you a renewal. See you later. Now, of course, Ken Holland's old enough he could ride off into the sunset, but I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to stick around a little bit and try to put the screws to the Oilers by getting another job. But until that time, do I want to see the Canadiens help out the Oilers? Hell no. I think, again, if you agree or disagree, comment below #Oilers. And in my mind, we've all talked about the different contracts that Mark Bergevin gave out that were complete horseshit and crap that were inherited by Jeff Gordon and specifically Kent Hughes. And they did a masterful job of getting rid of some of the worst contracts this team had and giving them a little bit of breathing room cap-wise. Right now, I believe they're somewhere at $8.2 million below the cap, and that's before Carey Price's money goes onto LTIR, so there's going to be even more room. Leave it alone. Don't give it away to somebody else, especially not for the pieces that we're talking about. Most people are talking about Cody Ceci and Brett Gulak. Brett Gulak is a Canadiens prospect originally. He was with this team wearing number 77 a few years back, and we traded him to Edmonton when we picked up Jeff Petrie. I don't want Brett Gulak back. He doesn't bring anything to the table that some of the young guys can't bring. Especially, what are you going to do? You're going to bring in Kulak to take away a job from Lane Hudson? No. You're going to bring him in to take away a job from Jaden Struble? Hell no. There's no reason for Brett Gulak, who's a left-handed defenseman, to come in and take away jobs from the younger crew who have done very good work on the back end for the Canadiens in the last couple of years, especially given the lack of experience. And then you look at the other guy, Cody Ceci. Cody Ceci. You want me to trade and overspend for Cody Ceci, a defenseman that's going to play the right side that I don't need? What do I need Ceci for? We had a defenseman who was much cheaper than Ceci on this roster, and I'm going to get to it again. I mentioned him more than once. John Kovacevic. He could have done the same job Ceci's doing for a lot less money. So why would we go out and sign a guy whose costs more to do the same job for a guy that we just got let go or traded away for a draft pick to the New Jersey Devils? I'm not doing that if I'm Kent Hughes. I'm actually looking at the Canadiens right now, and I'm seeing a team that's on the verge of getting into the playoffs. A team that's on the verge of getting to that next step that we've all been waiting for. The rebuild's almost done. It's maybe a year away. 2, worst case scenario. But I think it's a year away. You know, with Kirby Dach coming back and with some of the other players that we've got on the roster, Cole Caulfield, Juraj Slafkovsky, Nick Suzuki, I think this team is going to go far this year. I think they're going to contend for a playoff spot. But that being said, I'm not going to go and piss away my cap space when, say the Canadiens are within 6 or 7 points of a playoff spot in February or early March, and they need a piece or two to get them over the hump. We all know that David Savard's going to go. So, if David Savard's going to go, why not use that cap space to get something even better? You don't have to get somebody with term so that you tie up that money for more than one season. You can do it for 1 year, and then you could really go out and make a splash on the free agent market the next year. When everybody knows, the Canadiens got into the playoffs, or they were right there, they were a point or two away, we better be careful because they're going to start being perennial contenders. And in saying that, look at the other teams in the division. Buffalo, Boston. I mean, Tampa and Florida, okay, they're going to be right up there. Who else can you pick out and say, okay, they're going to be right there? Toronto? Sure. So that's 3 teams out of the Atlantic Division. Okay. So let's say Toronto gets top spot. Florida gets second. Then you got, wait a minute, you got Boston. Who's that 4th team in the division to take the wild card spot? Do you think Montreal can get that wild card spot? I do. I think they're very close to it. Maybe you disagree. Again, in the comments, go ahead, say it. But I think they're right there. And with a little bit of help at the trade deadline, you get rid of Savard, you bring in some more talent. Lo and behold, they're more than just there. And we've seen teams from a wild card spot get to the Stanley Cup final. Anything's possible once you get there. The Canadiens did it during the COVID year, right? They got to the Cup final, when nobody expected him to get past that first series against Toronto. They did it. So why should this be any different? Why should we think any differently? So screw the Edmonton Oilers. I'm not giving them anything. They don't deserve it from Montreal. And then let Montreal grow as it grows. Jeff Gordon didn't give away anything when he was with the Rangers. He didn't give it away when he was with Boston. So why should he do it now? Why would Kent Hughes do that? And I don't think Jeff Gordon would let him. So stay the course, guys. With a little bit more patience on behalf of Habs Nation, the Canadians are going to get to that next level. I guarantee it. And they're really, really close. Now, on to the next subject at hand, which is the RFAs that I think the Canadians should target going into this season. Not next, now. Guys that are available that more likely than not can make a difference on this team. The first one, of course, is a guy that you guys are talking about, and that's Dawson Mercer from the New Jersey Devils. Mercer's still not signed to an offer sheet by the Devils, so he's still out there hanging around somewhere. And in 246 NHL games, he's got 131 points, so he's not a world beater by any stretch. 6 foot, 180 pounds, so he's not overly large. What's the draw? Sure, he's a good 200-foot player. He's a right-handed shot. What's the draw? Tell me. He's cheap? Sure. That's a draw. He's young? Sure. That's another draw. But he's played 3 full seasons, got 131 points. So that's 240. He's about 0.5 points per game, to be honest. So why are we jumping through hoops to acquire Dawson Mercer? I don't care. I don't see the reason why Montreal should go after him. Who do I want Montreal to go after? Let's start with Cole Perfetti of the Winnipeg Jets. Perfetti is most certainly the type of player that I want to see in Montreal. But again, he's another one of those guys who's very small in stature, right? What is he? Let's see here. He's 5'11", 185 pounds. So he's a decent size. And in 140 games, he's got 75 points. So he's got a little bit more production than Mercer does in the sense of percentages. And Perfetti has shown last season that he can make that next step. 71 games, he had 38 points. So more than, just over 0.5 per game. I think that Perfetti would be great with Montreal because Montreal lacks one thing right now in their lineup, and that's left-handed centerman. Perfetti fits that mold. He's a left-handed center. He's young. He's fast. He does need to work on his defensive game a little bit, but, you know, young players have a tendency of learning rather quickly, especially around Marty St. Louis. So I'd like to see him go out and sign him possibly to an offer sheet. He'd come as cheap at the $1.1, $1.2 million level. And again, when I say the Canadians should go after an RFA, I think they should do it old school and not really worry about signing these guys long term. Hey, sign him for a bridge deal, maybe a couple of years. Let him show you what he can do. And if in a couple of years, while he's still only eligible for arbitration as an RFA, then you negotiate with him and take away some of his UFA years. That's the way it should be done. And I think that's the way Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon see it being done. And I think that's the way the Canadiens organization want it to be done moving forward. So, yeah. Is Perfetti the answer to everything? No, but he'd be a nice piece on a team that is missing that left-handed centerman component. And in saying that, I think the next guy that you might want to look at from that same ilk is a guy who's a little bit bigger at center, a guy who can, put points up. He's got 220 games under his belt, 105 points. Not as prolific a scorer as either Mercer or Perfetti, but I still think he's got a lot that he can bring to the table, and that's Cole Sillinger of the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Columbus Blue Jackets right now are a dumpster fire, and they're ripe for the picking. So if you go out and you sign a guy like Sillinger to an offer sheet, will Columbus go out and get him back? Like I said, he's only played 3 seasons, 220 games. He was sent down in 2022, 2023 for 11 games. maybe Sillinger might be another guy, another left-handed centerman who'd be a good fit with Montreal. And he's another guy whose offensive game, he's a sniper, so you know he can let it rip. His wrist shot is world class. You know, he needs work in his own end, just like a lot of young guys do. But centers are centers. They always take a little bit longer to develop because defensive coverage varies from team to team. You know, you get used to it at the junior level, and then you come to the AHL or the NHL, and whoop, they pull the carpet out from under you, and you've got to learn a whole new way of thinking. So, bring in Sillinger. Have him get into the system. He's a big, solid forward. He'd be a great third-line center. Maybe even second-line center/wing to complement somebody like a Kirby Dach who's right-handed. I could see that happening as well. So there's a lot of options there as far as these players are concerned. And finally, the last guy that I want to bring to the table here is Lucas Raymond of the Detroit Red Wings. Now, Raymond is a very interesting prospect. You know, 174 points in 238 games, 5'11", 188 pounds. You know that he plays a defensive game because he's with Detroit. So the onus is on him to be solid in his own zone. He's a winger, so he's not necessarily that centerman that we're looking for. But last year he was 72 points in 82 games, so he was almost point per game. And he's still not signed. So would I go after Lucas Raymond? Oh yeah, in a heartbeat. And I'd offer him a little bit more on the bridge because of his point totals. I'd maybe around the $2.25, $2.5 million range for a couple of seasons. See if he maintains that. And then, of course, you jump after that. Taking in, like I said before, some of his UFA years. You could sign him up to 8 at that point. And then you're creating that very valuable window that the Canadians keep talking about as far as windows of opportunity to be able to win. You need to have these guys there long term. Now, they've locked up Cole Caulfield. They've locked up Uri Slafkovsky. They've locked up Nick Suzuki. They've locked up Caden Gooley. So that's 4. Your core is normally 6 pieces when you're looking at a hockey team, maybe 7 or 8. So there's plenty of room to add more players that you think are going to be able to grow your team. Lucas Raymond is one of those guys. Go out there and get him. Make the team better. Now, if you agree or disagree, of course, like I said, comment down below. In this case, for this subject, hashtag RFAs. And, make sure you show us the reasons why or why not. Listen, not everybody's going to agree with what I think. I've known that for years. Even when we used to do just the podcast. Everybody used to think I was crazy, but oftentimes I did say something that made a lot of sense. I think this does make sense for the Montreal Canadiens. They're cheap as far as cap space. Hell, the Canadiens could sign all 4 of these guys to an offer sheet and still come away unscathed. Why? Because in Lucas Raymond's case, they probably have to give up a first-round pick. The others, though, maybe a second or third. And the Canadiens have a ton of picks in the first 3 rounds. 2 in the first, in fact, next season. So that would be the perfect time to go and target an RFA. Now, whether or not Kent Hughes wants to be that kind of general manager remains to be seen. But if the opportunity's there and they want to pull the trigger, this season would be the time to do it because the cap space is there to do it. Again, coming back to the value I talked about with cap space before. It's important to have that money because without that space, without that money available to you, you cannot go out and get players of the ilk. You cannot go out and create a competitive team. So let's see what Montreal does as far as the RFAs are concerned. Now, I brought up this other graphic before. Montreal Penguins. What did I mean by that? Now, it was talked about that Chris Letang demanded a trade back to his hometown in Montreal. And as most of us know, the reason why he did that is because of the fact that his health is really hindering him. He's had a couple of strokes. He's worried he may have another. And as I've said before, my father being a victim of multiple strokes, once the first one comes, the others are expected. They can't be avoided at all. And each one takes a bit more out of you. My father, in a sense, had about 10 of them before he passed away. So you know that Chris Letang is worried about that. He wants to be able to get that one season in Montreal so that he can hang him up and say thank you very much. But at his price tag, I don't think anybody wants to go out and bring him in. Now, hear me out, because I think this idea actually bears merit. If the Canadians don't want to go out and get an RFA, maybe with all the assets that they have and the fact that the Pittsburgh Penguins are really in a tough situation as far as talent's concerned, maybe, just maybe, it's time to try to get one of these two. Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin. Now, obviously, you can't get both. Both of them will cost you upwards of about $20 million in the cap. You're not doing that by any stretch. But what if one or the other? You know that Sidney Crosby wants to come to Montreal before he ends his career, as he stated a million times since he came into the league in 2005. His father being a former draft pick of the Canadiens as a goaltender. You know he wants to come play for Montreal, his childhood team. He's always said it, and I think he'll do it. I don't think he'll be a lifelong Penguin. I think when his contract is up, he may very well turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to sign with Montreal. Whether it's at 8, 9, 10, he's still almost a 100-point player per season. He's still got a lot of hockey left in him. So going out to make a trade to get Sidney Crosby, trading away maybe a couple of prospects and a couple of draft picks to Pittsburgh in exchange, that might be the way to go, to get a guy of that talent onto this team for 1, 2, maybe 3 seasons, maybe even more. And by the same token, Evgeny Malkin, you know, he's been on and off again when it comes to Pittsburgh. He's had a love him, hate him relationship with that town for years. So he's another guy at about the $9 million mark that, you know, you could get him to come to Montreal, I think. He's always liked playing here, like most players say anyway. But it's a European flavored city. And now, with a kid like Ivan Demidov coming in, don't you think that a player like Evgeny Malkin would make a great mentor to somebody that young? Somebody who speaks his own language, somebody that can communicate with him clearly? I think it'd be a great idea. So whether you're going out and you're getting Sidney Crosby to augment what you already have, or whether you go out and you get Evgeny Malkin to help you out, I think both of them might be available for the right price. Jim Rutherford is always a guy who thinks outside the box. He's always made deals that have been iffy with some of the teams he's been with, especially when he was with Carolina. So why expect any less as the GM of the Penguins? I could see it happening. What do you think about the Montreal Penguins possibly happening? Hashtag Penguins, and let me know what you think in the comments. We've got the cap space, as I've said. We can go out and we can get them. Maybe Pittsburgh will hold on to some of their salary in order to get those prospects and draft picks because they need them badly enough. I don't see why not. What's the worst that can happen? No thanks, but no thanks. So why go out of your way to make things not happen and not ask? Pick up the phone, Kent Hughes. Call Rutherford. Say, hey, Jim, Kent Hughes here. What might it take for you to trade Sidney to Montreal? What might it take for you to trade Evgeny to Montreal? See what he has to say. Entertain it. Would he? Maybe. Rutherford's never said no to a trade or a request, right? We've seen it time and time again, like I've said. He's that wild card type of GM that thinks a little bit too far outside the box, as far as I'm concerned. So I'd like to see it happen. I wouldn't mind seeing either of those guys come into Montreal, especially after what Markov said with Demidov. You know, Montreal would be a good place for him. It would be. European city, a lot like home. Hell, bring in Evgeny Malkin. Lo and behold, you have a mentor for the kid. He can live with him for a bit, get used to the city, get used to being in the National Hockey League. Malkin can keep an eye on him. It's a win-win for Montreal. And again, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no? Big deal. Let us know what you think. Remember, go out there, like, subscribe, and get notified for all the different shows here on Montreal Hockey Talk. And remember what I said before, follow us on all our socials. Don't be shy. And don't be shy about commenting. Let me know how crazy you think I am. I appreciate all the love and all the comments. Share that we're back with your friends and family. Thanks for watching Montreal Hockey Talk. We'll see you next Sunday.